is our world, the world of duality, the world where everything has its pair of opposites, two sides, two aspects, like and unlike, heads and tails, ups and downs. There are two sides to everything. Welcome back to Inspired Messages, where we bring messages to elevate the soul. Honor and reverence to the ancestors and spirits that always protect, guide, support, and provide for us. Thank you for visiting. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and share. I send you all love, peace, and health. Today, we discuss the concept of duality. So let's dive in. All manifested things have two sides, two aspects, two poles, which are considered one pair of opposing energy or force with varying or different degrees. Duality is a natural law governing the whole of creation and life. There is spirit and matter, or matter and dark matter, the all, capital ALL, and the many, the law, capital LAW, and laws, and the principle, capital PRINCIPLE, and principles. And then you have infinite mind and finite mind. All of these are just the same with merely a matter of degree of mental manifestation. So I would say that all of the opposite or opposing forces that I just mentioned, these are all things that takes place in the mind. Matter is the void, the mass that is present in everything that is physically, that is physical manifestation, and spirit is the breath that is present in everything that is physically present. Dark matter or invisible matter releases no energy of itself, but exerts a gravitational pull on all the normal matter or visible matter of the universe. And whereas matter is the mass of the universe, which pushes or repels all the visible matter of the universe. So therefore you have spirit matter, which are two poles of the same thing, but completely opposite and contrary, that govern the whole of creation, which creates the law of duality. And I hope that is clear. If not, just leave your questions or comments below and I will respond. So now let's analyze how this concept is present in our lives. When we look at the ancient Egyptian mythology, and remember, mythology is truth, we find the god Seth, which is the god of the night sky, of darkness and death. And he is in opposition to the god of the opposition to light, the god Heru, the god of the sun, the sky, light, and life. So here you have two opposing forces, which are represented by the sun and the moon. Let's take a look at another example. If you have a thermometer, you cannot identify where the temperatures on the thermometer. You can't identify where hot or cold begins. You only see lines that depict the varying degrees of the temperature, which provides a reading of whether something is hot or cold. So the lower pole, of course, is going to give you a temperature of cold, and the higher pole is going to give you a temperature of hot. The concept of duality is also prevalent in our emotional, present in our emotions. You have fear and courage. You have pain and pleasure, and elation and depression. And other examples of this duality concept is dull and sharp, activity and non-activity, push and pull, mind and body, and intuition and logic. So there are several symbols that depict the concept of duality, but I'm going to take a look at the yin and yang symbol. The yin and yang symbol represents the harmonization of duality, showing the two aspects of a whole, the feminine and masculine energies, and the dots in the middle represent that there is no absolute yin or yang, and that each contain the germ of the other. The yin and yang is a spiritual reminder that the balance is needed between light and dark, between the sun and the moon, between our feminine and masculine aspects of ourselves, between us being passive and active. And of course, we know in nature you have that's functioning in perfect harmony. You have the north and the south, the east and the west, all functioning as inseparable, yet as an interpenetrating relationship. Other symbols that depict the concept of duality include the caduceus, the tree of life, the concept of as above, so below, as within, so without, the microcosm and the macrocosm, as the universe, so the soul. And also, if you look at the tarot deck, you have the magician who's holding up his hand. He's holding his hand, his arm stretched upwards toward the universe, and the other hand pointing down to the earth. And so he's representing his connection between the spiritual realm and the material realm. And this is manifestation. And what all this concept, the duality concept, provides for us is to help us to live a more holistic approach in life. And so, and by doing so, we harmonize and balance these two opposite poles of ourselves. And then we also have ourselves, and when you hear about our shadow selves, which is something I'm not going to get into, but just mentioning that your shadow self is also part of you. That's that dark aspect of you that we fight against all the time. But yet that dark aspect of us is needed in order for us to become whole. And so in understanding this concept of duality, we find meaning. We comprehend that there is really nothing absolute as it appears or as we perceive it in our minds, but there is, and so there's no meaning as well as absolute love or absolute hate. They are merely terms applied to the two poles of the same thing. In other words, there are degrees of love and degrees of hate, but then there's a middle point where like and dislike becomes so faint, it becomes so difficult to distinguish between the two of them. And thus this same rule applies to courage and fear, elation and depression, and pain and pleasure. And so here, here's something to think about. We were taught that there's a heaven and hell, and a God and a devil. So with this insight about duality, is there really a heaven or a hell? And or is it that heaven and hell are opposite poles? So to conclude with that, is there really a judgment day that will determine whether you go to heaven or hell? And that's just something for thought. So are we going to live in our hell, or are we going to live in our heaven? In other words, are we going to function as our God divine love, or are we going to function in our lower human nature as our own devil? And the understanding of the concept of duality also helps us to comprehend how we can transmute our mental states to our, transmute our mental states for our benefit, and also help others to transmute their mental state. And so, with this comprehension, we find that you have the two poles of love and let's take love and hate. And so we know that love is positive, and thus it's vibrating at a higher degree, at a higher vibration, with a higher energetic field than the negative pole of hate, and thus always dominates. And so this is why it's important for us to vibrate on a higher energetic level, because then you're absorbing divine love and divine energy. And so this will help us to easily raise or lower our vibration, and become masters of our minds and not slaves of our minds. And so by doing so, we can essentially stop centering our lives around judgment, condemnation, and fear, and embrace the concept of duality to find balance and transform distrust into trust, inner resistance into grounding, and anger into joy. Because this is the direction of nature: harmony, balance, the law to function as a whole, the dominant activity of the positive pole of love, divine love, the duality of our world, our being. Thank you for listening. I hope this message elevated your soul. And until next time, one love.